We begin with politics. Now, reactions have trailed the call by the 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, for a single term of 5 years for the office of the President of Nigeria. Now, Obi had said this would make the occupier know that they have a job to do within the limited time available. He said this was a practice in South Korea where the president cannot seek re-election after a single term of 5 years in office. Meanwhile, first national chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Chekwasa Okorie, said Obi's proposal is a sign of desperation. Okorie noted that although Obi has said repeatedly that he isn't desperate for power, his proposal paints a different picture in the minds of many Nigerians. Now, to discuss this with us, we're joined by public policy analyst Jake Ekpelle. Mr. Jake, thank you so much for joining us. And what are the likely political implications of a one-term presidency on governance, especially in terms of policy continuity and long-term planning?
Well, it's not surprising for politicians to pull the plug at every point in time. I am not surprised by what I heard from Obi. There are two perspectives. The first perspective is the perspective of a 5 year term, which is an idea that anyone can discuss and look into. Well, the second perspective is the perspective of saying he wants to do just one term, which I think is unnecessary. We've had many people say that, many politicians say that, and they pull back and never did that, So first proposal can be a discussion, but he should also know that it will take a lot of constitutional amendment and electoral laws amendment to achieve that. So I don't think he was probably postulating that for the meantime. It could be something that could be looked into. But the other one about him doing 1 year, one term, it's something that I take with a pinch of salt. We've had several other presidential candidates in the past say that, and once they get into the office, they see all the trappings that the office provides, and they would go back at their word. So it's expected of politicians to say things that will probably get the people's sympathy and swing the vote for them. But like I said, the first aspect, which is the 5 year term, is something that can be looked into, but also it will take a lot of constitutional realignment, amendments, and electoral laws amendment to achieve that. So it's usually the political talk of the moment.
Now, do you think this proposal by Peter Obi would reduce the do-or-die nature of Nigerian elections, or would it merely just, shift the timeline of political tension?
Well, for a one-time 5 year term, it might, but it's still not enough. It's really not enough for anyone to achieve what is expected of the office. I would still stick to what we have, and because what we have is also what the Americans have. We borrowed our electoral laws and electoral practices aligns with that of, it's a mixture of British and American. And so you find in America where the president will do a 4 year term and then go back to do a second 4 year term. There's nothing wrong with that, except that we have crooked politicians who just wants to do whatever they like and get away. 4 years really and truly is not enough time for anybody to deliver fully on his or her mandate. It's not enough time. So the second 4 years should be a time that you begin to focus on your legacies and work for the people. Okay, some people can hit it for the first 4 years and achieve everything that they want, but it's a tall order, to be honest with you. If you want to do a truly political analysis and taking into cognizance the past leaders and what they've been able to do in their first term, it's a Herculean task, especially if you want to take into consideration the Nigerian situation. It can be tough, but it's a subject that can be discussed. It's a subject that we're discussing right now, and who knows, we might end up adopting some of these suggestions if it will help move the needle. But we have a very complex political landscape in this country. We have a very complex politicians, especially not all politicians are crooked, but we have quite a huge number of crooked politicians who just want to align their pocket, who doesn't have the mind to serve the people. Many of them really have no business being in leadership because they don't have the traits of a leader. All they want is for themselves and nothing for the people. And I think it's high time Nigerians will start resisting this crop of politicians who doesn't mean well for the country, who have no business being in leadership because all they want is serve themselves.
All right, Mr. Jake, I'm going to get back to you with another question, but for now, we're being joined by the former national coordinator, Middle Belt Patriots, Zari Yusuf. Zari, thank you so much for joining us. We've been having a conversation based off of what Peter Obi has proposed, one term for Nigerian president, which should be done in 5 years. Now, would a one-term limit make a president focus more on legacy and reforms rather than re-election campaigns, or could this, encourage a short-term, a short-term populism?
Well, first of all, I would attend to that question in the light of what state Nigeria is in, the situation Nigeria is in. That came as a result of what basically the 4-year, 2 terms has basically been doing. I think right from some time, maybe 2 decades ago or so, or maybe 1-2 decades ago, you realize that, the former LP presidential candidate in 2023 said, you spend the first tenure primarily appeasing godfathers, people who played this role or that in politics, and then you store up money, you bribe people, you run a second tenure, you do what you want to do, and you exit by ensuring that it's your protege that comes in. But looking at the Nigerian situation, it would be a very, very difficult thing to basically make a profound impact in a single tenure of 5 years as it is now. The reason is because Nigeria is not exactly as if it's on a flat surface. Okay, we are deep into a lot of mess. We are deep into borrowings, ruined economy, and then corruption that has been instituted in the system. So when you talk about that, it could work for an individual who is determined to bring it to be. But a lot of times you would realize that a lot of presidents will come in. You can't do that by, first of all, running a 4-year term and then running for a second tenure and saying you want to make it 5 or 6 and then single tenure. But judging from the track record of the person of Peter Obi, I believe it's something he believes he could pull up. And I think to a large extent that could be possible. But basically looking at the Nigerian situation, it would be a very, very and extremely difficult task. But how difficult is it? Is it because it can't be done, or is it because there has been the lack of political will to make that happen? So I think it is less about whether or not it will work and more about political will, which the person making that assertion basically has, because he has demonstrated it time and again, at least in terms of consistency and keeping to his promises even while he was governor. So the Nigeria of today actually needs measures to discourage a situation where it's almost certainty. An example is we're in a regime where a little into the second year of the regime, campaigns have already begun, serious campaigns. So it's not even about back channel stuff. It's open campaign and all of that. So which simply means for this 4 years, there isn't any government in Nigeria. There is just people with power struggling to win an election in 2027. And that basically is where the country is in this mess. So yes, it will be a welcome idea if there is that political will. And when you talk about political will, you talk about people who understand, especially the merchants of politics, who would do everything possible to make sure nothing basically works. And that's quite unfortunate. But yes,
Mr. Yusuf,
it's possible if there is that political will.
Mr. Yusuf, do you think this move can be interpreted as a tactic to appeal to a specific, voter demographic or a political bloc?
Well, frankly speaking, if anybody says that is a tactic to appeal to a particular voting bloc, he will not be wrong. The reason is because I think the initial statement was not exactly a single tenure of 5 years. It was, I will run for a single term of 4 years, and that's all. That was basically how it began, which, I won't really basically go too detailed into that, but that was basically how it began. And I think that had to do with whatever negotiations were being done with regards to the Northern Voting Bloc. I think I will be blunt on that. It has to do with, the Northern Voting Bloc, because power is in the South, and then there's another Southerner working to get power. And then the thought is, okay, well, if another Southerner gets power, maybe looking at the history of how it went with Goodluck Jonathan, perhaps he may like to run for 2 tenures, because it looks as if every president has to run for 2 tenures. So he made that statement to guarantee that he wasn't running for a second tenure. And that is the reason why even this one that proposes a single tenure that would be constitutionally ensured will definitely look like an antique, to appeal to a particular voting bloc. So anybody that sees it that way would be right to basically look at it like that.
Before I let gentlemen, before I let both of you go, I just want both of you to give me a response to this briefly. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Jake. What are the risks? Let's compare the risks and the benefits of adopting a single-term presidency in Nigeria, especially looking at the developing state of our democracy, as I'm going to compare it to a more mature democracy. What do you have to say about that?
I think I'll put it this way. First of all, I commend the very objective analysis of my panelist. Very objective. Listen, truth be told, if I want to work for the benefit of those who elected me, truly and really, then you have to put aside the concept of godfatherism or trying to please a particular voting bloc or trying to, read the handwriting on the wall of those who pushed you into power, and just work for the people. So if you are serious within the first 4 years, you can deliver on your mandate. And then if you're able to do well, then the next 4 years, you'll be elected. What are the pros and cons of a 5 years term, like you ask? Anyway, it's something that can be discussed. But anyone who is not able to do well in 4 years, there's no rocket science. Nothing says that person will do well in 5 years. So Is it good? It can be good if we truly adopt it and practice it, but it's not a measure to say that this is better than what we had before. Let's do it. There's a lot of constitutional provision that is required to activate this.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Jake Ekpelle, for that. I'll come to you now, Yusuf. Please, in 60 seconds, just let me hear your take on this.
Well, yes, I think, like he said, to be very honest, there are people whose career it is to sponsor politicians, even at the level of the presidency. whose primary source of income is basically what they get, the contracts, the power they play with, and all of that. Now, whatever it is that suggests that a candidate will come in and have a single tenure of 5 years simply threatens whatever structure is in place. So one of the consequences of that would be that it would, and Nigeria doesn't really look prepared for that. Let me put it that way, because the question would be who would, get to put that? Who are the people who would effect that constitution and all of that? Especially looking at, is more or less saying you should put a constitution where governors will not be running for the, seat of the Senate and all of that. So it's something that is already modeled up. And I think it's more strategic to have a more impactful 4-year, tenure, and then whatever it is that will follow suit would come in. I just what I think personally, actually.
All right, I must thank you, gentlemen, for having this conversation with me.
For having us.
Thank you so much.